You talked about work from home. It's interesting. I mean, there are some benefits to it, right? I mean, parking might sound, if you've worked in a hospital, you understand how bad parking is and navigation around a campus and those kind of things. And this really frees that up. It also, there's a lot of really expensive real estate that gets used in this. I think people anticipated a significant drop in productivity moving people to their homes, but I don't think we've experienced that. What kind of things are you going to be looking at to determine your future model?
One of the great quotes, our deputy CIO said it a year and a half ago, Jack Kufal, he happens to be our CISO also, and we're talking about work from home. And I think maybe remote work is probably the more accurate statement because it really is just that. We talked about productivity. And I love what he said. It was one of those off-the-cuff comments, but it just resonated with me very much. He said, well, how have we been measuring productivity to date? And I think what it really gets to is that, one, we don't really measure productivity very objectively, but we have a sense of productivity because we just see people physically around. And I suppose to some extent, there is something to be said for when you're expected to dress up professionally. And by the way, I am wearing clothes right now. This is not me, wearing pajamas at the bottom, but when people are professionally dressed coming into the office and you kind of walk by, and in general there's a inhibition to just be watching YouTube videos for 3 hours and going home. There's some degree of external constraint for productivity, but I think the more modern approach, which we were already working on within ITSM in some real sophisticated objective work with one of our other senior directors, Michael Warden, was how do we use our ITSM tooling, tickets, metrics around response time, metrics around first time solution, as opposed to just taking a ticket and passing it along to 3 or 4 people. And I do think that when we start looking at measures of a healthy project, measures of proper process that we can work on and improve upon, those kinds of measures allow someone to manage a more remote workforce effectively. At the minimum, you could say, to make sure you're not getting really bad, poor productivity. But ideally, that's when people start to say, look, before I had a 45-minute drive to work and home, I just have an extra hour and a half of time now freed up because I don't commute. So I can be more productive, and that face validity can then be attached to other measures that we wanted to use anyway around I'll still call it our ITSM tooling. But really, it's a much deeper view around services, metrics, measurable, quantifiable work that what I'm hearing in both talking to a lot of people, but seeing in our productivity measures, we're better. An example, one of our very large data groups have told their senior director, and they were going to be one of these groups who might have stayed at one of our old buildings as we're consolidating into one building. They said, we have no interest in moving back to the old building right now. Let's just wait until we can get into our new consolidated one building for the entire IT staff. And interestingly around that, I was having to argue for a 5th floor in this building to move about 3/4 of our enterprise IT group into this new location. Now I don't have to. That 5th floor, which I thought was going to be very tough to get from a financial point of view, completely take it off the table, and we can move the additional 200 people into the building because we're going to have a much more remote workforce. And what it will likely be, and I'm sure others are thinking this way, it's probably not going to be that a large group of people now are completely remote. Instead, there are people who want to be coming into work, but I think it'll be a more hybrid type work. There will be people, whether it's Monday and Tuesday, it's one team, and Thursday and Friday, it's another, or a lot more hoteling space and a lot more collaborative space. And there will be some formal, these are days where teams come together for team meetings, teamwork, joint sessions. But then there's going to be a lot more work from remote. And I think that overall milieu will overall be a more productive and frankly, collaborative milieu for us to work in.